Lord, that was a bit hot, wasn't it? I think something must have actually gone a bit crazy from last week, because last week, I don't know if anybody watched live last week, we had a slight issue. There was actually a massive power cut, and so Sonic Talk was interrupted. I should say, actually, hello, welcome to Sonic Talk. This is episode 492. I'm going to stick with the sequence just because otherwise it'll throw everything else out. So Sonic Talk is the podcast dedicated to music technology, musical instruments, software, synthesizers, the technology of musical creation, recording, live sound, any of that kind of stuff, and all the sort of issues surrounding it. We broadcast weekly at Wednesday at 4 p.m. UK time on YouTube Live and also Facebook Live. You'll be able to get the podcast via iTunes as an MP3 and also as on YouTube after the effect. So don't worry if you miss it or you have to go, you can't watch the whole thing, don't worry. I also want to say thank you very much to our sponsors. We've got mentioned for Isotope are going to be giving away a copy of Neutron, and if you were around 2 weeks ago, because we didn't get time to do the competition last week because of the power cut, you will find out whether or not you won. So we'll try and aim to do that somewhere around halfway through. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and hello everybody. Let's start over here. We've got Mr. Marc Doty. Marc Doty, of course, Automatic Gainsay, synth reviewer. In fact, he's got the Matrix Brute behind him there. Marc, I'm trying to think, where are you?
I am in St. Paul, Minnesota now.
Ah, okay.
Different time zone, so there's been a bit of a scramble this morning getting ready, but yes, despite the fact that my microphone wouldn't seem to work with Skype and the fact that my laptop just went completely down and I couldn't bring it back, so now I'm on the iPad. It's been an interesting morning here in St. Paul.
Sounds better though, to be honest.
Oh, good. Okay.
So you've moved, you've relocated, and of course, if you haven't seen Marc Doty synthesizer review, I don't know, how many are you up to now on the Matrix Brute? I last counted 9 videos. So,
well, there are currently, I think 16. I think there are 18 of them.
Whoa.
There are 2 that I don't think I've uploaded yet. And there's a lag between what the general public sees and what my Patreon supporters see. My Patreon supporters see them as they come out. Everyone else gets them like twice a week. So I'm not sure who has seen what at this point. The whole thing is pretty overwhelming. I mean, it's never been like this, except for with the Pro 2, which is the other one that got up to 18. But I'm probably going to make it up to about 23 videos, which is just...
Wow. How do you decide how to break it down? I mean, do you kind of... I guess if a synthesizer's got too many features, then you'd have to get into kind of, you could get into ridiculous levels of granularity, right?
It's true. I try to break it down, basically general functions, and then I just try to do like things at the same time, things that are similar at the same time. And yeah, there's sometimes where I kind of have to juggle things, or sometimes I combine things when the functionality is somewhat limited. But when you have a modular synthesizer, it was the same thing with the Pro 2. I don't know what to do because it's impossible, literally impossible to demonstrate every function, which is what I typically do.
Yeah.
So I have to find a way to sort of hint at possibility, which is hard.
I know that feeling. I mean, I did the peak review. I only did 3 videos. Well, actually, it was 2-parter. Then I did a sort of sounds only thing as well. And, that was really difficult to kind of try and get everything in because... I mean, just looking at the mod matrix, I mean, the Matrix Brute is even worse. I mean, the mod matrix, there's something like kind of 10,000 possible routings. And it's like, yeah, I don't think I'm going to go into all of those, obviously, because that would just be crazy. So it's a question of sensation of it. So, but I'm guessing you feel complete. What's next on your list of reviews then? What's your next item?
That I'm not sure I can say yet.
Oh,
I don't. There's
how exciting.
Yeah, there's a new thing that's going to be happening from a certain company, and I can't really...
You can't really say anymore. That's fair enough. One thing I should say, exciting, box opened today, just before the show. This is the sound of the Digitact, the Electron Digitact, which arrived. I've got it for a little while. I'm going to sort of try and get to know it a bit. I'm not going to attempt to review it totally because Cenk very kindly is going to come over and we'll do the double act thing over there but I'm going to do a kind of hello, I've got one unboxing. Here's what a few sounds are, questions in the comments type of thing. So yeah, we will do. If you've just joined us, Sonic Talk, obviously. We're here. Last week we missed obviously a show because there was a power cut and it was impossible to bring everything back up. But I have managed to bring all the stuff back up and get it all working again, hopefully. But there might be something that creeps in that means I don't realise it's not working until it's too late. So anyway, thank you very much, Marc Doty. Automatic Gainsay, check him out on YouTube and all of those other places. And of course, we have another Marc. This is a double Marc week. So we also have Mr. Marc Tinley, Sonos Major, sound designer, shopkeeper of little shop of very interesting audio curiosities. Would that be a fair assumption?
I think that's a pretty fair assumption, yeah.
So we haven't had you for a little while either.
Somebody came in earlier and they were wearing this very rainbow kind of Tibetan kind of woolen fleecy thing. I said, oh, wow, I like your top. That's really colourful. And she said, wow, this music shop's amazing. It's the most brilliant music shop I've ever been in. Oh, it's so colourful and wonderful.
Did you buy anything?
Wow, okay. So I must be doing something right. I'm making all the hippies happy. So
the hippies happy. Did you?
Yes.
Making all the hippies. I'm going to make a note of that. That is a great show title. Making all the hippies happy. Did you sell her anything?
No.
Well, that's not quite the same thing.
I'm not really a salesman, to be honest. I don't know how to do the close. So I do the banter and warm them all up and everything. And then at that point, you're meant to do the open your wallet and give me money thing. And I don't know. I can't read people. So I don't know if they really want to buy something or not. And then, good salesmen would find out what they wanted to buy and manage and how they needed to sell it to them. I haven't got any of that.
Well, I'm sure it's something that will come.
It's not what I'm up to anyway. So it's more about making weird stuff and having fun and presenting it to the world. So
excellent. Well, yeah. I'm very glad to hear that. I guess we should probably get onto a few topics. The first one is rather sad, actually, because I don't know if you remember this. This is obviously a classic tune. I'm going to play some of it unashamedly. I don't know if you know this, but this is Robert Miles, who died very suddenly, or at least to us. I mean, he may have been unwell for a bit, but this is a massive track in the night. I don't know if it translated to the States. I think it did pretty well in the States. Let's have a look. I think it went gold in the States. This is Children, and this was kind of the beginning of the kind of stadium, mainstream, trancey, ambient kind of stuff. When you hear the beat, you'll probably remember it. This was huge. It's just a shame that it's kind of under such sad circumstances that he's gone. And in many ways, it was it wasn't quite a flash in the pan, but it was such a huge record. And then the album that it came off, which I think was, I'm trying to remember what it was called now. Dreamland, that's right. And it was so huge and so pervasive. And it really, and certainly in Europe, he really kind of defined a whole sound of what people were looking for. Certainly if you were doing remixes at the time, that sort of thing, that's kind of what I want it to be, like that, because that was absolutely everywhere. I mean, obviously very sad news, and our condolences go out to him and his family and all of the people who knew him. But I thought what was interesting was there's a lot of technology surrounding this. So I'll start with you, Marc. I don't know if this actually I'll start with you, Marc Doty, I should say, because obviously two Marcs. Because I don't know if how much in your consciousness, this track perhaps was.
Well, let me tell you a humorous story that will have probably the entire audience saying, Nick, why do you have this guy on the show? Basically, I saw this in your email and I watched it. And it started playing and I'm like, this is beautiful. Oh my gosh. And I'm listening to it. I'm like, wow, this guy is really, really good. I'm really impressed by this. And then the beat came in and I was like, oh, really? Man, why did you put such a played out beat on this? This is like something, this is a 90s beat. Why would you do this? So, now I completely understand, and I regret that I don't think I was exposed to this, to my knowledge, in the 90s, and that's sad because, wow, that is a fantastic piece of music.
Yeah, it really did work. There's some lovely other sections to it as well, and it really defined kind of a period of time. It's like a snapshot. You get those tracks that come along, and they're just that's the sound of that particular era. And I remember at the time for me, well, perhaps we'll go into that anyway. Mark, you probably remember this. I mean, this was a little outside the sort of acid era, but obviously, it was a really big thing all over Europe, massive hit.
Yeah, I was probably overexposed to it. Actually, I'm not gonna say anything negative about it, but it's not my. I like the piano. I think the piano is beautiful, but that beat, that kind of is it like trance, or was it
it's a classic Euro trance type of for the time. Yeah.
See, I liked it when it was all like smack on the beat, and then to throw things back off onto the offbeat thing. I felt that was like a return back to the New Order kind of thing of having it going gunga gunga gunga. Do you know what I mean? So we're going on and off the beat. And the emphasis in this is on that offbeat, isn't it?
For the bass line,
I don't really like that. I like it when it's slamming right down hard on the beat. So I never really got into the whole stream of music that this spawned. I could never quite gel with. So
interesting. I mean, I think the thing for me, it was very melodic. I mean, if you listen to
the melody, is beautiful.
Yeah, it's really funny though. If you listen to it, it's like an era of technology defining record. It's got obviously JV1080 on there. It's got a 303 style sound. I suspect it was a bass station, to be honest, or a super bass station. And it's also got obviously the 909, and I think that was an M1 piano or perhaps an O1D. And it's this entire, this is because I remember at the time, we had a bass station, we had a JV1080, which is perhaps where some of those other sounds came from, and there's a bit of guitar in there which sounds like it's probably a JV10. It's like this entire sound set that somehow all of those presets were made almost so that this record could happen. And if that sounds without being too derivative,
that makes sense.
It was like a pinnacle, and I think that's the thing about that time. It felt like it was all the voicings that were current and now, and it really influenced some things after. And it'd be amazing to have that kind of level of influence, even though now it might seem a little bit cheesy. At the time, it was very defining, and certainly as a remixer and producer, it was like, right, we need to get these kind of sounds because everybody wants our remixes to sound.
I think that's where I went
reference wrong. This kind of thing.
That must be where I went wrong.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking I want to avoid using that kind of sound. And then I didn't do any huge blockbuster 350,000 copy selling remixes, did I? So there you go.
I've been told perhaps actually it's not an M1 piano, and I would agree. Actually, it's not quite clangy enough. It might have been. Somebody says it might have been a Kurzweil K2000, or it might have been one of those other units, one of the Roland piano units. I don't know, that sort of thing. Do I remember, Mark? Did you have any of those items listed in my gear list that I just said? Did you have a 1080? Do I remember?
Yep.
No, I had absolutely none of those items.
Because you were when you were creating music, you were multi-instrumentalist. You were doing what were you using at that time to do your thing?
Pretty much from 1991 through 2000, I did everything on an EPS 16 plus sampler. There was a few when I was in college, and my college years were there at the beginning of that. My college had a Kurzweil K1000 that I used, and I used still was using an Alesis HR16 drum machine occasionally, but yeah, I didn't really I never got into that series of Rolands that happened in the 90s.
The multi-timbrality that was very, that whole thing about having a single unit, and the M1 as well, having a single unit that allowed you to kind of voice the majority of a song, whether it's just bread and butter sounds. The challenge back then was trying to create these signature sounds out of things that weren't really designed for signature sounds, or at least you had to work very hard at, I think, in many ways.
And for me, it was trying to get enough samples into the absolutely tiny EPS 16 plus memory in order to cover the bass and the drums. And so everything was at, just the lowest frequency response I could find. It was just sort of, I made terrible sacrifices, but it resulted in a unique sound. But yeah, so basically the sequencer in the EPS 16 plus was where everything came from, and everything else was me trying to use something that would sound new and interesting but take up the least amount of space.
Right. Yeah, I know that feeling. I remember that. I mean, Mark, you had the same. We've all had that same thing. But it's interesting that some certain records can define a technological era. I mean, there's the Josh Wink thing, the 909 and the 303. It's just bang, there it is. Those two. Anyway, sad news, but nice to celebrate somebody's work and recognize that they're so influenced. I mean, it went platinum in Switzerland, Canada, Germany, New Zealand, the UK. It went gold in the US, double gold in France. I mean, big. It's a big record. Big record. Anyway, let's see what's next. Did you see this thing about the MP3 end of life, which is really, I don't know if it's interesting or not, but it may develop some interesting discussion. This is apparently Fraunhofer, who are the people who, started with the license of the MP3, famously used Suzanne Vega's a cappella vocal of Tom's Diner, which I have an affiliation with, to recreate it, have now said they're no longer licensing it anymore. It's time's moved on. That's the end of that. So no more MP3. But it's still massively useful. I mean, I don't know, Mr. Doty, do you still use MP3s when you're sending out demos and this, that, and the other?
I'm not even. I guess I'm not even sure. What is the output that I usually go with? No, actually, I haven't done MP3s in a while because I can upload things to like SoundCloud, in AIFF. And so I usually do. But if I probably still would output it to MP3 from iTunes or something, if it even can still do that. I guess everything's AAC now. But
that seems to be the replacement now. I mean, I think that seems to be the kind of that Fraunhofer themselves said there's just no point. It was never supposed to be the high fidelity thing. In fact, I know Mark Tinley, you have
tested
many things. It was very bad at kind of richly harmonic, distorted guitars, right?
Yeah, and cymbals. It's horrific on cymbals. If you've got a single cymbal on its own, and it, especially a China cymbal, it sounds like loads of bells playing. It's like this, which probably won't come out over Skype because it's probably a similar, encoding thing. But yeah, it did sound bloody awful actually. But having said that, when I encode things to send to people, I encode them and whack them in MP3 because it's the most compatible thing out there. So if you're sending something to somebody who's got an older computer and you're not sure whether they're going to be able to play it or not, if you whack it in MP3, it's going to play. Or if they put it in their little MP3 player, it might not support some of the newer formats. So it's definitely the most backward compatible.
It's interesting that, there are some other factors about this. I mean, obviously, vinyl's had a resurgence. I mean, I wonder if we're going to get to the situation where, in 20 years that there'll be a resurgence of, that MP3 codec at 96 kilobits or whatever, that code. That's the one. That's how I want to get that sound. I mean, like vinyl's had a resurgence, tapes had a resurgence. Cassettes even had a resurgence.
Yeah, one of my suppliers has just sent me a list of all their new cassette decks. And they look like the things that I used to load the program data into my ZX Spectrum. And I'm looking at them and I'm thinking, why on earth would anybody buy one? Why would they buy one? But I've been told that the young people of today are into everything and anything retro. So they like it because it's retro, not because it sounds good, but because it has a certain feel to it.
Yeah, it's funny because sometimes when well, maybe that's it. There'll be a sort of nostalgia for this kind of slightly grotty sound.
But isn't it like maybe when the punk era came about, there was a certain faction of the punk era that broke off and went back into this kind of psychobilly, rockabilly thing and started wearing 50s clothes. And then they had this whole thing about certain 50s technology. And it was like all like cool things to have, like, those crappy food mixers and stuff. And it's like, I don't know, same kind of vibe, I suppose.
There's also, according to the Gizmodo article, there's even research suggesting the format's compression brings out negative emotional characteristics in musical instrument sounds. So we could have been exposed to this kind of really emotionally stunted musical output for almost, it's 25 years since it was introduced. I don't know how do you feel about that, Mark? Do you think you've perhaps been scarred for life?
Well, yeah. What I need to know is it in tune with the universe? Is that compression scheme in tune with the universe? And if not, have I been submitted to some sort of universe rebellion that is bad for all of us?
I think that's entirely possible. I would hate to. I would hate to think what kind of damage. Do you think that? I mean, could you imagine? I mean, so now it's out of license. There'd be some kind of massive. What do they call it? The group case of, what do they call that?
Class action?
Class action against Fraunhofer for emotionally damaging an entire generation of people's musical enjoyment.
Well, I did wonder, okay, so what does this mean? Because I think with the ancientness of my computer, I'll always be able to make MP3s. Am I not supposed to now, or is it just a matter of...
No, you can. You can do it without... It's now gone into the public domain, hasn't it?
I think maybe that's okay. Maybe you're right about that. I would like to obviously take legal advice before basing your entire business on MP3 outputting. But yeah, I think you might be right there, Mark.
But you could always have used a thing called lame anyway, which is not another MP3 encoder or something, isn't it?
I don't know, but it's all about reach with all of these things. I mean, formats are important, even though they're kind of dull. But okay, well, I think at this point it's probably time to revisit. Let's see who's won the competition. That's right, that's Isotope Neutron. This is the mixing tool from Isotope, which uses a lot of their latest technology. They've been using machine learning and all sorts of stuff. It's really quite interesting, the technology that they've got in there. Anyway, using the machine learning stuff, it recognizes the kind of tracks that maybe you're using and suggests what sort of processing you want on it. And it's also got a masking meter, and this is the really clever stuff, which basically gives you a visual representation of colliding frequencies within the mix that might be very hard to hear on your monitoring system. And you can then identify them, tweak them, and it really opens out the mix and actually cleans up, particularly in the mids and lower mids. You can really clean out a whole thing, and in the top end, obviously affect the stereo imaging. It's very interesting technology. If you want to try it out, go to isotope.com/neutron. And you'll be able to get, as with all their stuff, a 10-day demo. So looking forward to the next part of our Isotope story. In fact, we've got some more to come. But if you want to try out Neutron, isotope.com/neutron. Of course, we had a competition, it feels like weeks ago now, because I was going to announce the winner last week, but because of the power cut, obviously we didn't have a show. I have a winner from the last time. There's a guy called Robert Charles Mann, whose Twitter handle is @ThenCameNow. And he tweeted, I've been waiting so long. Well, you've actually won this time. So I feel like I'm bringing some good news and spreading joy to Mr. Robert Charles Mann. If you get in touch, we'll pass you on to Isotope, and they will deposit a copy of Neutron, full copy, into your account, inbox, whatever, however it's done. Anyway, you've won. Congratulations. We've also got another competition that we're going to run this week. And this is, we're looking for the hashtag Mixwell, which is one word, Mixwell, and the hashtag Neutron, and you tweet that to @Sonicstate and @Isotope Inc. That's the hashtag Mixwell and the hashtag Neutron to @Isotope and @Sonicstate, and you will be entered for the competition. We'll announce the winner next week. So thank you very much to them for sponsoring the competition. It's very much appreciated. So, Mark, you were playing what were you playing there? Did I hear you playing some music? How dare you?
Me? Sorry. I thought I was muted.
Well, I muted you after a little while. That's absolutely fine. After all, this is a show about music, so that's no problem at all. Actually, this is kind of biggish news. Anyway, let's see. Did I have a video to play? I think I might. Yes, I do. I've got this. This is another Moog reissue. This is the 3C, or Moog, I do beg your pardon. And this is... only 25 they're going to make of these. This is the original complete system that was designed to kind of give people who had the money the ability to create a complete working musical system. And this is a very nostalgic piece of electronica as well, to demonstrate what it could do. I'm not sure it probably demonstrates all of the things it can do, but it can. There's a bit of polyphony, bit of drummage, sequencing. The new 3C has 10 901 series audio oscillators, the 984 Matrix Mixer, and the 905 Spring Reverb. And it's the sort of thing, I won't play the whole thing, it's the sort of thing that, I know Ty's got a 55, and I see you've got a Mini there. I mean, you've had your hands on the originals and this kind of thing. So, I mean, is this the sort of thing that you think is good? It's exciting? I mean, it's nice to have this stuff in the world, right?
This caught me by surprise. I didn't know they were going to do this at all, which is weird because I usually hear like little bits of things, but I had no idea this was coming. And when it came out, I was like, wait a minute, like, and I'm like, first I had doubt because I was like, okay, no, you can't do a 3C without 901s. I mean, what did you guys put your 921s in there? The 901 is the oscillator in the original. And but no, apparently they've made 901s. And that brings up an interesting question for me, because anyone who's ever worked with a 901 knows that A, they sound so great, and B, their tuning is a massive challenge and their range is a massive challenge. Oftentimes, in many of the vintage Moog modulars I've played, you have about a 2-octave range before the range goes wonky.
Wow. That is challenging.
And that's just one of the sad things about the 901, although I have played 901s that somehow were better. And no one seems to know why that is. But I wonder how in this day and age, with people so tense about tuning and, precision, how anyone's going to respond to, if they've accurately recreated the 901, it's going to be pretty messy. But I hope that they left some of that mess in there because that's where the tone comes from. So I'm excited. I really, and also this is a weirdly historic moment because the 3Cs did not have the Moog logo on them. They said RA Moog on them. So it's really weird to see like a 901 with the Moog logo. That was a weird outcome. I'm not sure, like the console panels of the 3C were different than the console panels in the 1974 modular remake. So I'm wondering, I haven't examined the console panels in the original 3C to compare it to what was done in 74 to see if they actually remade all those console panels too, which would be totally weird. But yes.
It's I mean, I wonder if anyone's going to be disappointed. I mean, it's a whole chunk of money. You'd hope that you'd know about all of this stuff before you bought it, because you could imagine it coming and then going, I'm a bit disappointed about the stability of my oscillators that cost me $35K or whatever, But yeah, it's an interesting thing. I mean, it's a collector's piece, really, I would guess. I mean, I'm guessing, Mark Tinley, you're probably not thinking about pushing the button on one of those. It's perhaps not something that is thrilling for you.
The only thing it makes me think of, and it's not too sideways, I promise, is sort of in the end of the 1980s, I think there was a company in Britain that started making a Mark II Jaguar, and it looked exactly like a Mark II Jaguar, and they tweaked a few bits underneath, but basically it was like tens of thousands of pounds just before the whole, yuppie bubble burst and everyone lost all their money. You could buy this brand new car that was an old Jaguar, and it just seems, I don't know, it's a cool thing for a very limited people to do. So it makes sense for them to make 35 of them, I suppose. But I'm not going to be one of the 35 people who buy it because I want the latest technology in my car. So when I crash into someone, I don't kill myself.
Or them. Yeah. Well, that's fair enough.
Although my music might be the opposite to that, thinking about it. When I play music, I want it to sound like I am crashing into things. And it's...
Well, there's a spring reverb in there as well, so you can always just whack the case a few times.
Now that makes it exciting.
Maybe you could just buy the spring reverb on its own. I don't know whether that's true or not. While we're on the top, there was some really just breaking news. Subsequent 37 has just been announced as well, which is a kind of an update or a limited edition of the Sub 37, which, as you know, I've got one of those, and they do sound really lovely. And what they've done is they've added 6 assignable CV gate outputs. and updated. And what have they done? They've changed the more multi-drive, wider range and dirtier, also better headroom, which is good because in duo mode, it would always just blow the filter up without kind of, even if you didn't really want it to, unless you really dial it back. 2,000 units, upgraded keyboard, and a higher power headphone amp. But that's the Moog Fest announcement. So if that's something, so while we're doing the Moog portion of the thing, I tell you, Mark, that's something. The Sub 37 is a great synthesizer. There is no two ways of about it. It really is one of their finest for some time. I don't know if have you had your hands on one of those, Mr. Tinley?
Wait, sorry, I was muted. I don't know if I have or not. Is that the little one?
No, it's the last big one. No, well, maybe you haven't.
Oh no, I had my hands on a Moog Voyager. Is it similar to that?
It's not actually. I think it's kind of different.
I don't know. Find out what this is then.
Yeah,
sorry
maybe
about
so.
that.
Mark, have you tried? Did you do something on the Sub 37 whenever that came along? I can't remember whether that's whether you did or not.
No, the Sub 37 came out after my sort of schism with Moog Music. So I've only played one in like a music store. So, but yeah, I do not have an extensive experience with the Sub 37.
Okay. Well,
I've Googled it now.
Always check my review. I did a review on it, and I've been using it anyway. Well,
hang on a minute. Didn't you have one at that show that we did in Bath?
In Bristol? Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
Oh, right. I have seen it then.
Yes, you must have done.
Yeah.
All right. Well, maybe we'll move on then. Let's see what else we've got. Oh God, this is bonkers. Did you see this? This is called cellF,
the world's
which is
first neural synthesizer.
a guy called Guy Ben
It is an autonomous
Ari
instrument.
took some cells out of his
composed of the
body
brain
and created a neural
made of
network and
biological
interfaced it
neural
with a modular
networks.
system with some clever stuff
And a
going on.
body made of analog modular synthesizers that work in synergy. The neural networks are bioengineered from the project's initiator Guy Ben-Ari's cells. There is no programming or computers involved, only biological matter and analog circuits. A Wetalog instrument.
Wetalog. I like the sound. I'm not going to play the whole thing, but that goes on. There was performance with a live drummer playing, and the cells responded to the audio stimulation by reacting and controlling the analog stuff. And this is one of those kind of bonkers science stories where you just think, oh, wow, I can't wait to hear what that's like. But actually, when you listen to it, it's really disappointing. And you sort of want this. You want to have some kind of like, oh, it came up with a melody, or wow, that's really clever. And I mean, the technology is fascinating, and it's obviously a very early stage. But it seems like one of those things that you just kind of go, oh, that's a shame. It didn't quite kind of make you get quite so thrilled. I don't know, Mark. Mark Tinley, did you check that video out? It's a really, I mean, I can't imagine.
Superb.
I can't imagine how much it must have cost to develop.
I mean, it looks absolutely brilliant, and I love the idea. But I think that as human beings, we've evolved music in a very specific way, and that you have to teach anything that you're asking to play music those rules, otherwise it won't make sense. And that also, in different cultures, interpret sound and music in different ways. I was thinking about this in the bath this morning, actually. I started to make a list of things, but basically all sound is like things colliding into other things, isn't it? So a hitty thing hits another thing, or rubs it, or it vibrates in sympathy to something else. But then as human beings, we've picked certain intervals and decided those things are more important than other things. And this thing probably doesn't know any of those rules. So until
I'm guessing it doesn't.
it,
Actually, this is rather unkind, but it made me chuckle. This is Borjaws in the chat room. He says he must have taken the cells from his arse. It's kind of mean, but it always feels terrible to kind of belittle something like this, because the process and the concept is amazing, and the technology and all those things. It's just, unfortunately, the results don't kind of quite give you the payoff that one is sort of really desperately hoping that that's the case for. I don't know, Mr. Doty, are you? How do you feel about this kind of whole AI thing, or do you think it should stop at a range of keyboards?
Well, I mean, I think what this is postmodern art, really. It's a concept, and the concept is the important part of it. It's like this music was made from this process, which is kind of a postmodern concept. And the process is the important part of it. And the outcome is like an interesting reflection of the process. But again, I agree with what Marc was saying. Like, music is, we talk about, people scream on and on about how music is all subjective and anything is music and blah, blah, blah. But that's really, really essentially not true.
No.
We can appreciate a wide variety of sounds, but when we really think about music, there is a language to our musical expression. And we speak that language to each other, and we have emotional responses from it. Yeah. And I just think this thing would work a little bit better if it adequately demonstrates the importance of sentience in brain cells. But,
Yeah, I mean, you've hit the nail on the head. It's language, because we could say that all noises could be us communicating with each other. But if I go, if it's not following certain rules, it's not understandable at the receiving end of that, is it?
Yeah,
so
it's meaningless. It might
so
convey
we tailor
an
our
emotion.
communication to the person that we're speaking to, and we do the same with music. So if I'm in a punk band and I know my audience are all punk rockers and they want to feel a certain way, I'm going to play something that's going to make them feel like that. And I'm buying into that whole kind of genre of music and that whole cultural kind of bias and creating in that realm. And this just seems to be randomly creating in sort of, I don't know, the world of being able to make a noise.
There's more videos in it, and in one of the videos it was kind of he as a younger man, was this is Guy Benari. He wanted to be a rock star, so he's trying. They're implying that he's projecting his desire to be a rock star into this kind of petri dish of cells that is controlling music, so it can be the rock star. Which, conceptually, again, it's a kind of conceptual issue. It's kind of fun, but it's very far from any of the ingredients that you would need to be a rock. It's a kind of media star. I mean, it's become well known for being what it is, but not for what it does. Perhaps, does that make sense?
Right.
I don't know, but anyway,
I've tried doing this myself actually with children. I thought if I project my ideas onto my children, one of them will want to be a rock star. One of them wants to be a school teacher. The middle one is a really cool bartender. And then the youngest one says that guitars are not cool, Dad. And girls will not like me at school if I play the guitar. You're talking rubbish. The only thing that's cool is Minecraft or Roblox.
Wow. Okay. Although a very singular pursuit, I suppose, in many ways. Maybe he needs to rethink that theory a little bit. But
I know he's not a teenager yet. Once he hits teens, I reckon he'll realise that the girls do go for the guys with the guitars still.
Well, that's interesting. That is an interesting.
Or maybe the cool synth.
Well, I'm not sure they go for the guys with the synths. I don't know, Mark. How does it work for you? Because I certainly am not getting propositioned very often. Hey, ladies. Check my synth.
Which Mark, me or him?
I have these.
Yeah.
No. I've done pretty well with synths. So.
I think this is heading in a direction that's perhaps only going to end in something bad. I know. I'm going to play this because speaking of synths, have you checked out our synth? This is the Max for Live device that we've done in conjunction with Metafunction. This is full voice paraphonic Max for Live synthesizer. It's got 3 filters, 5 LFOs, 5 envelopes, and wavetable synthesis, and a 12-slot modulation matrix. I mean, you've got to check. It's £19. It's the price of, a couple of beers. So do check it out. bit.ly/Wavejunction will get you there. Or if you go to the site, there's ads for it everywhere. And I'm going to do some more videos on that because I've been getting some really lovely sounds out of it, and I want to push it. And I want to give you guys a vehicle to help support the site too. So we're just trying a few things, and we suggest if you're into Max for Live, check it out. Anyway. That was a non-ad, wasn't it? It was a bit apologetic. I'm not going to apologise. What the hell? Buy my stuff right now. What are you thinking? Even if you haven't got Max for Life, just buy it.
Yeah.
So
I could sell you a set of guitar strings for £19.
Excellent.
£19 is nothing these days. Nothing at all.
It's funny, isn't it? But the whole concept of free is really it's played havoc with commercial.
I think
stuff.
it has. Yeah, totally.
Let's see. Where's this? Did you see this guy? The Push Turn Move book. This might be something that interests you. This is the book by the guys from. Let me see. I think there might be. Is there a video I can play? Oh yeah.
In my day job as a graphic designer,
Jeez.
I've always been interested in functionality and aesthetics, especially in the Scandinavian way of approaching design, but also in how we interact with things around us. It's the same curiosity that makes me spend all my free time with electronic musical instruments. I've spent ages on YouTube, blogs and magazines, studying great inventors.
Oh, it's too
like
long.
Bob Moses,
Missed your sales point. This is basically a new book,
drum
Push Turn
machines,
Move.
DJ controllers, to mixers.
Basically, it's like one of those kind of coffee table books that is talking about the concept of synthesis, interfaces, controllers, all that kind of stuff. And it's turned into this kind of complete monster because they started off as like, oh yeah, we'll get some funding. It's a 300. It's a beautiful thing. I saw it at Superbooth. They came up and showed me a kind of draft print. It's a really beautifully printed thing, and they were looking for Kickstarter funding. I think 50,000 Danish kroner, which is, I think it's about, I don't know what that is actually. I think it's about. Five. It's not much basically, and they've exceeded it by 1,000%. They've actually raised 540,000 Danish kroner, which is about 50 grand. It's got a forward by Jean-Michel Jarre, a whole bunch of other contributors. Although I'm not sure if any. I don't know if you, Mark, were approached for this. I mean, it's obviously their particular take on it, but it's a beautiful thing, and the idea of this kind of. Going back to this old school concept of a coffee table book about synths. I mean, when we were kids, we buy these kind of things. It just sort of feels somehow like, why would you do that? No one's going to want it. But look how many people want this thing.
I had two responses to it. My first response was a swear word because I've actually really wanted to write a book about synthesizer interfaces. And I mean, it's probably what I would do is probably very different from this book because there's a number of concepts I want to portray. But I'm like, wait a minute, how is there enough of a market for synthesizer interface books that two can exist? And to be honest, I don't think so. Especially if this one's like 300 pages. It's like, even if mine was completely about different things, it's like, it's such a niche concept.
They beat you to it.
They beat me, but it looks really beautiful, and I want to read it. It looks really interesting.
Push to Move. I think it's going to be dropping around September. I mean, do you still kind of hanker after those? I mean, there used to be these kind of specialist bookshops that only sold kind of coffee table type books, like those Taschen books of, 500 chairs and, all of those things. And they were the same for guitars and music making things. I mean, they just seem to be a thing of the past, but they're not. I mean, I'm really glad this exists.
It's weird, actually, because there's either 3 or 4 bookshops that sell books like this on Glastonbury High Street. I don't know, I like these kind of things. So there's something really nice, especially if they're really like, that like almost like Formica white paper.
Yeah, I think
the
that's
Dorling Kindersley books with like tractors. Oh. I'm going to tell you the numbers because I've just whacked it in xe.com. So he wanted to raise about $7,000. I'll do it in dollars because then that helps the Americans. And he's actually raised $80,000 US dollars. She, whoever's doing it. So, but I think he's about to raise a little bit more because I think I want that book. So
there's a guy called
Kim
Bjorn from Copenhagen. Like I say, I met them at Super. They were really lovely. They were kind of walking around with a draft print. I mean, it wasn't finally finished, but it is a really lovely thing. And yes.
I used to have there's a book called the Guitar Handbook, which is really good.
That's the one I've got. Yeah, I remember.
And then there's another one which is called the Synthesizer, or either the Keyboard Handbook or the Synthesizer Handbook. I've still got all those books.
I think I had that as well.
And that might have a foreword by Thomas Dolby, or it might be Howard Jones. Actually, I can't remember, but.
It's funny though because the notion of like kind of books about current technology, just the life cycle of the publication cycle. By the time it gets out,
Yeah.
It's already out, particularly with the way that things move at the moment, it's already out of date. And, you know, you might be waxing lyrical about, a book might have come out where they're waxing lyrical about the Korg Monotron, you know, finally, but it's, you know, 2 years or 3 years or however many years ago, you know, it moves so fast, it's almost impossible to keep that sort of off. So I think you're right, Mr. Doty. You know, the idea is to go more for the concept and the philosophies behind it, and the beautiful design things, because obviously quite a lot of Swedish instruments have a lovely design aesthetic. So it's just a thing of beauty, right?
Well, yeah, and it's such a fascinating, you know, we don't really see with musical instruments the procedure of interface that has occurred, because it happened so long ago, and so many of the instruments, even at the beginning of the 20th century that we were using, came about at least 100 years ago and before. So we were sort of stuck with these musical interfaces for centuries, which is really cool. But when synthesizer technology arose, how people came to the conclusions about how electrons should be controlled. It's a fascinating thing. What sort of tactical interface is the right one for making electrons do a thing? And so the history is really amazing. And it's interesting, whenever someone would come out with a decent idea, everyone would sort of glom onto that, and it became part of the language of the instrument. And that's been a hugely interesting thing. And then we come up, of course, to the Mini Moog, and the Mini Moog was so massively definitive that everything after it is still pretty much, you know, this design. And as far as interface is concerned, still knobs, still wheels, still essentially keys, although that's falling away. But it was a huge impact. And I think people today are asking, well, is that the language that I want to use to interact with these electrons? And I think that's an interesting question. But also, I think people also need to realize that we came up with these interfaces because they were the ones that worked.
Yeah, they're not always the best one. Well, I mean, because you see those 1950s kind of RCA and Philips oscillators and these things, and they've got the sort of just a huge dial with a load of funny switches on, and you know, you can't think that is not necessarily easy to use. It's just that's kind of what was available. Those are the parts that might have been available to me. I'm talking of the history of this thing. I saw a really fascinating BBC program, which if you get the chance to check it, it's probably still on the iPlayer. If in the UK, you might be able to see it. I don't know if you can see it in the rest of the world. It's got the history of electricity. And I just did not know how transistors and all of those things and diodes developed due to people growing these kind of these crystals of differing layers of stuff that enabled you to upscale voltages from amplify things, and it just blew my mind. I just did not know about that stuff, and it's a fascinating history. I mean, you know, I guess it's related to electronic music, because without it we wouldn't be where we are today. But just they've still got these huge kind of rooms where they're growing massive germanium crystals. Combined with other elements and different layers. So when you take a slice out of it and make a silicon wafer, it's got this voltage differential and gain in, and it just allows you to do all this, you know, these ridiculous. I mean, it blew my mind, and it's one of those technological solutions that you just think, how on earth did we manage to figure that out? That looks so complicated. I mean, we think sometimes, hey, who invented the Wellington boot? You know, it's like, why did they need that? How did they decide a sandwich of these ingredients would be a good idea, or how did you figure out how to cook beef, you know? But this is just out there completely in terms of trying to solve those problems. I find that really fascinating. It's well worth checking out. I can't remember what the name of it is now, but yeah, do. So anyway, Push Turn Move. I think you can get it. I think they're going into production. It looks like it's going to be retailing in October, which and they're expensive, €75. They're not cheap, but it's a high-value coffee table book. Let me see if I've got a picture of this here about the book. There we go. Oh, look, we get a logo featured on Sonicstate. There, we've got Devine, Moldova, Skinner Box, Axel Hartman, Dave Smith, Dorrit, Teenage Engineering, Jordan Rudess, of course. There was, I'm pretty sure, I thought there were some other people I was going to mention. Anyway, perhaps not. But, so that's Push, Turn, Move. What else have we got? God, it's 5 to 5. Can't believe I've been talking nonsense for so long. Oh, yeah, come on, we got to do this. Hold on, here we go. Is this going to play? Oh, do play. Please. Ah, okay. There's such a great synth sound in this.
Every civilization was built off the back of a disposable workforce. But I can only make so many. Happy birthday.
There is an order to things. That's what we do here.
Oh, you know what? The sound is better than the visuals in that for me. I mean, I'm still looking for where's the guy who does I Do Eyes, you know, where's all of those characters that I know, and Rutger Hauer and all of those people. But yeah, that's the news that we have covered this before, but I had to do it again because I heard that trailer and I thought, ooh, that sounds really promising. There's Blade Runner, obviously, 2049 coming on, I think it's October the 6th. I got really excited because I thought it was actually the 10th of June instead, rather than the 6th of the 10th. And I was like, oh, wow, I could watch it next week. But I don't know. We've had this discussion before. Rich Hilton famously hasn't seen Blade Runner, which is kind of mind-blowing.
Seriously?
Apparently not. Wow. No, this is...
wow.
But an interesting...
I was about to go into some huge negative rant about why would they keep bloody remaking things. Then when you played that, even though you played that over Skype and it's just come out over Skype, all the hairs on the back of my neck and all of my arms went on end after those a couple sounds. So
I wonder. I'm not going. What this is really interesting, like, actually, because I was talking to Ty about this because he was going to come on and we were going to do this last week, and he said that the trailer in this case was Johan Johansson is doing the music for the film. But we don't think he's done the music for the trailer. So I don't know whether those are some of his sounds incorporated or not. Mark, you look like you're... Doty, you look like you have something to say here.
Well, yeah, my thing, you know what I'm going to say. I'm going to be like, this should all be done on a CS80. And, you know, I have all these ideas. But I have to admit, like, I agree with you totally in that trailer. The music and the sound in that was breathtaking. And then, I mean, it really... The visuals alone and the idea certainly is very moving for people like me and you. And but the sounds were just really, I don't even care how they were made. They're just gorgeous. And then hearing those thematic elements from the original, like Mark said, like I got goosebumps and I kind of teared up a little like an idiot. But yeah, it's overwhelmingly cool.
It's really interesting, actually, or maybe it's not interesting, but the fact that the star of that trailer, I mean, apart from the stars, is that massive sync, wobbly vibrato, analog sounding. I don't know if it is an analog synth. It sounded quite analog. It may not be. And that is basically, you know, that theme with that massive synth sound, that is kind of the star of it. And that's a beautiful thing to be able to kind of go, that's the thing that defines Blade Runner, you know, that one element. And it obviously it's been modified and it's different. It's not actually quite the same. And I wonder what it is that made that sound. I'd love to talk to the person who did the trailer on that and see if they could find out what it was. I bet it's probably a soft synth, isn't it?
My best guess is that is a thing called a Kyma Capybara or whatever the latest instance of that is. Those are the kinds of sounds that piece of software / hardware makes. I'd love to get my hands on one.
Yeah, they're quite expensive, aren't they?
Very expensive, yeah.
Don't you have to have
really niche and just very weird, but they do make some amazing noises. So
yeah, I don't know. I think that what taking bets, Mr. Doty. Do you think that was actually an analog synth? Do you think it was? Because it sounded over synced for a CS80. It didn't sound. It sounded like a CS80 on steroids. It's probably like NI Massive or something like that, right?
It sounded very, very clean, and. Yeah, I would guess that it wasn't an analog synth because, and I would doubt that it was a CS80, but you know, I mean, with
can you imagine? We want the trailer by Monday. Yeah, no problem. Oh, damn, that stopped working. Wait, can you just wait a little while I get my synth fixed, and then I can do the trailer? No, sir, you just lost the gig.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, it's. I'd be surprised if it was analog, but again, like it carries such emotional weight due to association and the fact that it's just a great sound that it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I think that's true. speculations. It was a DeepMind 12. I'm not sure it was. I'd be very surprised if it was. But I mean, not that as DeepMind 12 can't sound good. It just doesn't sound like that from my ears. But it's interesting. It wasn't fully synced. It kind of just sounded like a bunch of oscillators tuned. So you get that sync-like sound without it being oscillator sync, if you see what I mean. I'm making a massive amount of supposition.
But they all sort of morphed into a noise away. So they started off all like a synced tones, and then it kind of burst into this kind of expansive noise, didn't it?
Yeah.
So
it's probably some massive Pro Tools session with about 3,000 elements, none of them being actual,
including
analog,
screaming nuns.
Yeah, no analog electronics anywhere near any of it, But I guess that doesn't matter, of course. But it's interesting how, like you're saying, Doty, that how it evokes. I wonder if it has the same effect for people who have perhaps not got the kind of cultural reference of the original Blade Runner and how exciting that was at the time.
I wonder that too. I mean, because it's very, very, I'm finding myself very emotionally responsive to some of these remake things or some of these referential things, the Star Wars stuff. I suppose it's probably age, but I mean, these things have been with us our entire lives. But I wonder, like, do people hear that and just go, oh, the big synthesizer stab, whatever. Because for me, it carries such huge emotional connection. So I'm not sure. I wonder.
Anyway, I had to get that in there, and I'm ready to counteract the copyright claim on the YouTube, because I'd say as a movie trailer that is fair usage because it was illustrative of the film, and that's what it's for, right? So anyone wants to back me up, I might be looking for some expert witnesses when YouTube try and take me to court for whatever reason. Oh yeah, we got 100K. Woohoo! 100,000 subscribers on YouTube.
Oh, excellent.
And I forgot to mention that. I think I mentioned it last week, and then obviously the show was aborted due to the power cut. So yes, I don't know what we're at now, 100,001 or something like that. But for those of you, I'm going to put the play button somewhere visually where you can see it. It's apparently a silver play button. You get a silver play button at 100,000. Then you get a gold one at 1 million, which is, I can't see we're ever going to get there. It's still quite niche. But then you get a diamond one at 10 million. So I think there's some, they're pretty basic. And what I'm hoping that we can actually order more than one, so we can pass them on to our other contributors as well, so they can all share it rather than have to come round and I'll go, there it is, look. No, you can't borrow it. It's mine. Or, well, it's not mine. It's all down to the team. So that's what I just want to say. Thanks to them and well done. And thanks to all of our subscribers. Just because we hit 100K, if you haven't subscribed, please keep going. Let's go for that 1 million. Only 999,000 to go. Shouldn't take long.
Another 100 years then.
You think 100 years? Yeah, maybe. Something like that. I'm not sure. Maybe what I can do is if I leave some cells behind, then by the time 100 years come around, that my cells can be presenting Sonic Talk in the style of myself and responding to your cells that are also in Petri. We'll be like the Simpsons heads in jars, a Futurama, right?
I'll make you a little pulse width modulator then to make sure the cells are getting to do something interesting there.
Okay, that sounds perfect. Anyway, I think that's it for this week. Thank you very much, everybody. I don't know if we got quite to everything. I wanted to do a couple of shout-outs, actually, because we had a visit from Isotope yesterday, and also the guys from I need to scroll up, from Time and Space. We went out on a jolly lunch. It was very nice. But we've got a presentation of RX6, which is coming out, and we're going to coincide that, and we'll flip the prize as well. So I think we're going to be giving away RX6 for a little while, and there's some pretty cool features in there. So thanks to Lars, and thanks to Lexi as well, and also Melanie and all the guys at Time and Space, because they said they listen to this or watch it live. So we'll give them a wave. It'll be like the 70s with Gus Honeyburn. And we'll turn the lights off. Everybody, folks, live TV stuff. Anyway, that's it. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. It's been a pleasure as ever. Thank you, Mr. Tinley, from joining us.
You're very welcome.
From Glastonbury, and people obviously welcome to go and see your shop at certain Sonus Majors. Are you selling
Not
online
too many
now?
at once, though.
It's a small venue. Bookings
Very
only.
small. I can fit about 4 customers in now, at the most.
Wow. Okay. Is that because you've expanded your stock, or you've made more space so you can fit more customers?
I've made more space so I can fit more customers. I had expanded the stock to such a point where it just got to the point where about one person could get in there, and it was getting very silly. So I've done some clever things. I've rented a cupboard. So I've got a little workshop now. So some of my stuff is now in my workshop. And I bought, I had someone laughing at this earlier on. I bought, like, you know, those clothes rails? There's a guy down the end who's got a comic store, and he's got T-shirts outside his shop. So I thought all of these soft bags for guitars, they're just kicking around the shop and taking up space. So I've got them all outside. So when people go past, I say, "Excuse me, sir, what size guitar are you?" And then I can measure them up, you know.
So you can sell them a soft bag. Excellent.
But the hidden rub, of course, is that people looking for T-shirts look down and think, "Oh, there's some more clothes down there," and they come wandering down because I'm in a very hidden part of the muse.
Oh, Mark, the intricacies and the psychology of retail.
Yes, exactly.
That's a real, that's a whole other podcast right there.
I Googled that, and I found some pictures of very big shops and how to lay out a big shop. And I thought none of these layouts work in mine. So anyway,
well, never mind.
Yeah. One day.
Thank you for joining us, though, Mark. It's a pleasure to have you.
Welcome.
And also, Mr. Marc Doty, in your new abode. So, what do you? I forgot to ask. What are your plans? Have you got a kind of new direction, new things lined up? What's happening in your world that you can talk about?
I am still trying to put together. There are some podcasts that are going to start happening. I'm trying to produce a series of videos talking about the historical elements that I typically talk about when I do presentations. And I intend to market those. So basically more of the same sort of historical things, and of course, the possibility of these podcasts coming up. So I'm not sure I can talk about all of those either, but yeah. That's
all right.
So,
okay, well, Mark, thank you very much for joining us. Do check out Mark's channel,
me.
Automatic Gainsay YouTube, and we hope to have you again soon. We'll have another show next week, and then there's a week off because I get a holiday, and I just checked, and it's actually 25 degrees where I'm going, whereas here it's raining almost all the time, and I haven't worn shorts yet this year. It just feels like there's no summer in the UK, so I'm out of here, but I'll be around next week, and then we have a week's break. Anyway, that's it. Thanks for watching. Oh, I should say, just a quick recap. If you want to enter the competition. Oops, I think I pressed the wrong button there. What's happened now? Help. Here we go. If you want to enter the competition, yes, there it is. Tweet the hashtag Mixwell and the hashtag Neutron to @Sonicstate and @Isotope Inc. and you'll be entered the competition. You'll win a copy of Isotope's excellent Neutron. And I did forget to mention, actually, when you do tweet, I confirmed this with Lexi the other day, they have screens in their kind of social areas and in the canteens and stuff, which kind of trigger and show all the hashtags and all the mentions of the company. So anything you put there will actually go past a substantial number of the Isotope employees in real time. So that should be a lot of fun. Anyway, so just keep it clean, folks. But say nice things about us. That's all we keep, so we can keep it up. Anyway, that's it for this week. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you next time.